There's flexible class options, an affordable cost, and highly trusted professors. WBS is the school for you, and now is the time to take a next step and prepare for God's calling on your life. Learn more at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
Welcome to Today's Issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day.
And good Thursday, everyone. It is day 3 of the news coup here at Today's Issues. Fred Jackson, Chris Woodward, and we've deputized Dr. Ray Pritchard in Kansas City, Kansas. I say the news coup because Tim and Ed have been away all week. They will return tomorrow for Trivia Friday, but we've been kind of looking after the shop guys over the, it's been a quiet few news.
It's too late, Fred. The coup is underway. It is roll. We're on day 3. It's rolling now.
Yeah, TI today, the nation tomorrow.
That's it.
Hey, great to have you folks with us again today. We've been talking a lot about President Joe Biden, his mental acuity. I think that is the word that's being used quite a bit. Well, tonight, Chris and Ray, the president has a news conference. Now, normally a presidential news conference would not get a lot of public attention, but I am predicting right now this presidential news conference will have one of the biggest audiences in history. And this is because a lot of people, it's a live event. Supposedly, the White House, I think, has adopted the name a Big Boy
Conference.
Big Boy Conference.
Yeah.
This is crazy. We live in crazy days. We really do. Because the nation is going to be watching. It's a live event to see how the president performs without, a prepared speech in front of him. Now, here's my speculation. My speculation is he'll likely have, he's done this in the past, his preferred list of reporters to go to, number one. And probably he's got some notes in front of him for 3 or 4 topics. He'll probably like to speak to the NATO summit, of which he is hosting at the moment. But I'm going to be anxious to see, because here's the difference, Chris, and I'll let you kind of expand on this. The difference this time is that the mainstream media, unlike it used to be just Fox, referring to questions about the president's mental state, now the mainstream media is really, as we have seen in the White House briefings over the last several days, they have really gone on the attack. So a lot of people are going to be watching this just to see how he responds to all of this. Going to be an interesting evening.
Yeah, it may be the most exciting thing on C-SPAN tonight for sure. C-SPAN is one of the places that you can watch it. Fox and everybody, pretty much, if you have a broadcast license, you'll be carrying it, or you should. I mean, it's the President of the United States. I do think he will focus a lot on NATO, because that was one of the issues he tried to make with Donald Trump back during the debate 2 weeks ago, which we're still talking about. 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. It was a Thursday night, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
So he will, I think, make it a point to really try to focus on NATO and what they're doing to fight Putin and prevent the war in Ukraine from continuing. But reporters would not be doing their job if they did not ask him questions that have absolutely nothing to do with NATO. The biggest one in the country right now is, are you going to exit the campaign as George Clooney and other celebrities and big donors want you to do? George Clooney, of course, wrote that New York Times op-ed saying, I love Joe Biden, but it's time for him to get out. Michael Douglas came to George Clooney's defense, and a whole bunch of donors have since said, or I should say they've joined other donors in saying, we're going to cut off the tap here. You guys have got to find somebody else. And, of course, as we discussed with Sandy yesterday, there is a reported plan to try to get rid of Biden in August and come up with somebody else and have Michelle Obama, Taylor Swift, Oprah, and some other people do PR for those candidates should we get to that point. Let's begin with some audio here. We have discussed on this program how Biden's weakened mental state is bad news for us on a national security level. I've got some audio here of Victoria Coates. She was former Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. She has since gone to the Heritage Foundation. But nonetheless, Victoria Coates says our adversaries are going to be watching Biden's conference tonight, and it's very important. Clip 3.
It's critical because, I mean, we've seen President Xi and President Putin meeting repeatedly in recent weeks. We know the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, is watching all of this closely. And so, to have the kind of weakness we've had exposed over the course of the last 2 weeks from the Commander-in-Chief of the United States is deeply dangerous. And, my concern over the course of the next 4 months, however the Democrats decide to resolve their political crisis, is that you would have bad actors around the world seeing this as a moment of opportunity. Maybe they're going to do things that, even a year ago they wouldn't have considered. So it's a very, very concerning time. Yeah.
Real quick, to match with this, guys, even the Associated Press today, the Associated Press says, and I quote, his stamina and effectiveness are under the microscope like never before, and he is struggling to quell the Democratic Party's panic about his chances this November. For those that have not ever paid attention to this, the AP is more often than not a PR wing for the Democratic Party. For the AP to say this, it's bad news for the guy that wants people to give him another 4 years.
No question about it. Just want to go back, Ray, to the editorial that George Clooney wrote in the New York Times over this. It's kind of fascinating, the background to all of this, because just 3 weeks ago, Clooney, Julia Roberts, I think it was, Barbara Streisand, big Hollywood names, held the fundraiser in Hollywood. I think they brought in close to $30 million. Now, here's what's interesting. So that's 3 weeks ago. So Clooney doesn't say anything about the president's mental state at the time. But now he writes this editorial, and in that editorial he says, the Joe Biden that I saw in the debate on the 27th of June is the Joe Biden I saw at that Hollywood fundraiser. And you remember the one of the videos coming out of that event in Hollywood was former President Barack Obama kind of putting his hand the lower part of Joe Biden's back and leading him away. Here's the other thing that was reported this morning. Clooney, before writing this editorial in the New York Times calling for Joe Biden to step down, says he phoned Barack Obama, and I'm not sure if he asked his permission, but at the very least he said, here's what I'm going to do in the New York Times. I'm going to call for Joe Biden to step down. And he said Obama didn't have a problem with that. This all just adds, Ray, to the intrigue surrounding this. There are a lot of Democrats, high profile and otherwise, who think, regardless of what Joe Biden is saying today, they want him gone.
You know the old expression, the train has left the station. It may not have left the station, but there's smoke coming out of the smokestack and the conductor's calling all aboard. It's about to leave the station. Look, if Barack Obama had uttered a single negative word to George Clooney, that opinion column never gets written and never gets published. The fact that Obama didn't have any problem with it certainly means he agreed with the general thrust. And can you imagine what that fundraiser was like if it's true that Joe Biden was as apparently vacant there as he was at the debate? I think tonight, I was thinking, what advice would I give him? Well, you got to be strong, you got to be clear, you can't sound angry, and you can't look vacant, and you can't lose your train of thought, and you gotta act like you're visibly in control of all your faculties at all the time. And the other problem I think for tonight is, up until recently, he could rely on ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN to toss up some softball questions. I don't think he can count on that tonight. I think he's going to get grilled from the outset. He's got to be ready.
Yeah, he's being coached. Now, here's the thing. I remember prior to the last State of the Union address, and there were low expectations, but he beat them. And I think we have to be careful. I think he's going to be more prepared for the event this evening than he was for the debate. What do you think, Chris?
I think so. And we're not the only ones saying Republicans need to kind of, be prepared and to stay engaged, aware of this situation, stay politically active. I have some audio here from Governor Chris Sununu, who I know is a Republican from New Hampshire, which is a different kind of state compared to other red states. Yes, Governor Chris Sununu supported Nikki Haley, and he has not necessarily been on the MAGA train the entire time he's ever been in office. But he does make some valid points here, one of them being Republicans need to realize there is a long time between now and Election Day. Clip 5.
I think even if Biden stays on the ticket, if he has a strong convention, right, that if he has a strong presence there, if he can read the teleprompter at the convention decently, they'll try to point to that as, well, the debate was just a fluke. Let's not all panic. So obviously we're going to support Trump. We're going to support all the Republicans. I just don't want anyone, sitting back and saying we got this thing wrapped up. There's a long way to go in this campaign.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful. As of right now, and we're 15 minutes past 10 o'clock Central Time in the morning, Joe Biden right now is adamant on staying on the ticket. There's no question about that. He has a lot. There are Democrats coming out publicly saying that he should go. As we have noted, the mainstream media, for the most part, now has turned against Joe Biden. But don't underestimate the possibility that he will be orchestrated by his handlers to protect him against another debate-like performance in public. I think you have to expect that. Ray, the other thing that has really bothered me about this, we're talking about the mainstream media. They're now asking the tough questions. The hypocrisy meter is pegged for these people.
Yeah.
Because they have condemned conservatives and others who have questioned Joe Biden's mental state now for the last 2 years. And they have said it's all false. It's just you crazy right-wingers. I want to play for you. This is Chuck Todd, interviewed recently. I think, Chris, was MSNBC?
Yeah, Chuck Todd and Politico columnist Jonathan Martin.
Yeah. In this conversation, Chuck Todd, former NBC anchor, Chuck Todd admits he talked to somebody 2 years ago in the Biden who was questioning Biden's mental state. This is 2 years ago. Here's cut number 2.
I had a cabinet secretary 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay. 2 years ago. All out of the blue asked me, do you really think he can't run again like this? And I said, well, you have more interaction with him than I do. And they said, I don't have a lot of interaction with him. This is a pretty senior cabinet secretary. So, and this was 2 years ago.
Okay, my question, guys, is, all right, Chuck Todd, you were aware of this 2 years ago. Why didn't you report on it 2 years ago? It was because the mainstream media, Ray, was all in on protecting this president from any criticism.
Well, and the other part of it is they hated Donald Trump. They didn't want to see Trump back in the White House, right? And so once it became evident that Trump was the number one candidate, nobody's going to take the nomination away from him. And that was apparent a long time ago that Trump was going to be the candidate in 2024. What motivation did they have for revealing what they knew was true behind the scenes? I guess what we ought to say is the debate simply ended the hypocrisy. You couldn't deny what the whole world saw. We all saw the same thing. So the mainstream media now acting like heroes, calling Joe Biden to account. They should have done it 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, and the reality is, guys, the mainstream media still hates Donald Trump.
They do.
They still hate the Republicans. They want the Democrats to win. What has happened is they think that Joe Biden is a huge liability to the Democrats winning. That's why the mainstream media is now attacking Karine Jean-Pierre and Joe Biden at this point. It's not because they've had a political switch of mindset. It's because they want the Democrats to win and they want Joe Biden out.
Yeah, we talked about this a day or so after it was published, but in the hours immediately following the debate, when the Democrats were crying about Biden's poor performance, And then they started peppering Karine Jean-Pierre with tough questions for the first time in a long time, if not ever. You had even former New York Times executive editor Jill Abramson, who, let's just say, is not planning on coming to an AFA Action Pray Vote Stand Summit anytime soon, although she is certainly welcome to. She blasted journalists in Washington, D.C. for failing to hold power accountable and participating in a massive cover-up for the White House to shield President Biden's, quote, decline. She went on to say, "It is our duty to poke through White House smokescreens and find out the truth," adding, "The Biden White House clearly succeeded in a massive cover-up of the degree of the president's feebleness and his serious physical decline, which may be simply the result of old age."
Yeah, the fight within the Democratic Party is not over, Chris. And one of the stories that's out there this morning is that Nancy Pelosi is guarding her comments when asked about her support for Joe Biden.
Yes, and that's not Fred saying as much. We have the audio here. This is Pelosi offering, let's say, a less than ringing endorsement of the current president. Clip 1.
Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
Now, that, Ray, is far short of saying, I believe in Joe. Joe needs to stay there. Joe will take us to victory. No, what she's saying is, well, we're leaving it up to Joe to decide. I don't call that even a cautious endorsement.
Okay, so let's ask a question. Let me throw this back to you two guys. Let's suppose that tonight he does pretty well, okay? And maybe it's not a 5-star performance, but it's not another debate debacle, okay? Let's imagine that he gets through it. He doesn't there are none of these moments where he just seems to black out or freak out or can't, staring into space. Let's say that he's just reasonably cogent tonight. Then what happens to all this discussion? To me, this is what I was trying to say earlier about the train leaving the station. How do you undo all these comments that people have made? What happens tomorrow?
Well,
if he just does okay.
Yeah, here's what I would say. If he comes out today and has a great press conference, he doesn't fall apart. He answers questions. He goes all around the room and includes Peter Doocy, all these kinds of people. Media tomorrow, including especially like the Joe Scarborough, are going to talk again about how this is the best Biden there's ever been and completely ignore all of the negative comments. And when asked about that by other people, they'll just say things like, well, you're taking it out of context, or, but things are different today. They'll explain it away, and then just because they're all in cahoots with one another, they'll just move on.
Yeah. One of the other problems for the Democrats right now is the bench strength. It's just not there. The idea, even among some Democrats, Ray, that Kamala Harris would then jump to the top of the ticket, that has a lot of people concerned also because she just hasn't sold, I'm being kind here, she hasn't sold herself well over the last 3.5 years.
Well, we've heard how many of these interviews have we played of her word salad, where you listen to her talk and you can't make heads or tails or any sort of sense. I can't believe that the Democrats want to replace Joe Biden with Kamala Harris. Is that their best choice? But how do you pass over a woman of color, the first one in the vice presidential position? I mean, she's the logical choice, right? They are in a real pickle. Okay, ask this question the other way. What if he bombs tonight? What if he struggles like he did in the debate? And that's possible. A terrible performance. Then where are we tomorrow morning?
Yeah. Speaking of Kamala Harris, I do not have this audio. I can only share what Fox says she says, and we all know how Fox feels about Jen Psaki. But according to Fox, Jen Psaki has floated what they're calling best Biden alternative, but Psaki worries America is too sexist and racist. When you click on the link on foxnews.com, it says Kamala Harris is best alternative to Biden, but America is sexist and racist, according to Jen Psaki. There are people out there that are backwards thinkers, even in 2024. But this is part of the reason why, hatred and stupidity never dies, because politicians and people on TV won't let it. Okay, they keep drudging up the past and making people think there's a thing or whatever. If people were sexist and racist. Why have we had women and minorities in federal and state and local offices for decades now?
Yeah.
And why did 81,284,666 people vote for a man with a black woman on the ticket if we were sexist and racist?
Yeah, people like Jen Psaki like to throw that out there, Ray, sexist and racist. But it has nothing to do with Kamala Harris's sex or race or her race, ethnic background, whatever the case may be. It has to do with her character. That's where we are today. Now, the left likes to throw those kinds of things out there, but it's her character. It's Kamala Harris and her character.
If you go back, just 4 or 5 years, there's a reason why the Democrats, their own voters, put her down at 2 or 3%. She went nowhere in the primaries. There's a reason why people simply they don't feel drawn to her. They don't trust her as a leader. They don't like her character. They don't believe in her as a person who could lead this country. So it seems to me she may be Joe Biden's best insurance policy, because I don't know that the Democrats think it would get any better with her at the top of their ticket.
What has she done? I mean, she's supposed to go down to Honduras and encourage people here not to illegally immigrate to this country. That didn't work out too well. But she went down to the border once, I think,
right, in
the last 3.5 years. And then you have the latest controversy, which I think we dealt with yesterday, on her remarks kind of giving subtle praise to the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas demonstrators, basically giving them a pass on their hatred for the Jewish people in Israel.
Yeah, one thing she could definitely put on her resume that is true is, I have been tasked with more things than any other vice president in U.S. history. It used to be we sent VPs to like a diplomat's birthday or whatever else.
Yeah.
And now we're assigning her all these things, which, as we've discussed in this program, Steve's done clips for us, all these kinds of things. We even sent her to France one time, where she insulted one of our oldest allies when she went, the plan, to try to, do this crazy French accent.
Yeah. Well, I think I wouldn't normally encourage people to watch a President Joe Biden news conference, but I think it is worth taking in this evening. I heard it was at 4:30 Central Time this afternoon.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. Then I saw a time of 5:30 this afternoon. Going to kind of depend on when this NATO summit wraps up today. But I think it's going to be worth tuning in. They said did the debate have, did I hear the figure like 50 million people watch that?
It was a lot. I'll see if I can find a ballpark.
So I think this news conference will have a lot of people watching, and then making the assessment this evening and tomorrow. But regardless, so many Democrat Party supporter guys have come out so negative against Joe Biden. Some are saying it, regardless of what he does tonight, there still is the question as to whether he can continue for another 4 years.
People ought to watch tonight, because you're going to see something you've never seen before. You're going to see a Democrat president get hostile, aggressive questions from the mainstream media.
Yes.
In my lifetime, I can't remember that. So
No.
It's going to be fun to see how the president handles.
The last time they were hostile against the president was, guess who? Donald Trump.
Right.
Almost on a daily basis. I remember Sarah Huckabee Sanders was a spokesperson for Trump in the White House, and others. And those people were just peppered on a daily basis.
But to his credit, Trump often spoke to reporters.
Yes, he would come out. I remember. That's another thing that people have been wondering. Why doesn't Joe Biden get Karine Jean-Pierre just to step aside? Here I am. Ask me the questions. But we have not seen that. All right. We will wait and see. In the meantime, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, is going to be joining us shortly. Perhaps we'll be talking to her a little bit about this, but there are some other things going on right now in Washington, and she has her hand on the pulse of all of those things. So don't go away, folks. Much more here on this Thursday edition of Today's Issues. We'll be right back.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
One of the great surprises about God which I've learned to look for is his unobtrusiveness. We make all our plans concerning the coming of God, how God is supposed to act in history, what he is supposed to do. Then, when we have it all figured out, how he is supposed to come and act, we find him doing exactly the opposite. God did this at Bethlehem. Certainly no one expected God to break into history in such a manner as that. A carpenter father, a peasant mother, and a manger for a crib. Everyone knew that God would come in a manner worthy of God, and the whole world would bow down to him. But he did not, and they did not. God did this again in Joseph's carpentry shop in Nazareth. One who had such an important task as Jesus should surely receive better training than that afforded him at the local synagogue, and more advantages than those of a common carpenter. And because he was only the son of a local carpenter, the people in the synagogue drove him out of town. They knew that no carpenter's son could be the Messiah. If only God would act like God, then we common folk wouldn't have such a hard time recognizing him. We look for God in the great and powerful, but he comes in the small and humble. I worshiped once at the St. George Anglican Church in Jerusalem. It was a high church, very formal worship service. The music was beyond reach of the common person. The minister spoke above my level of comprehension. In general, it was a situation devoid of the things we generally associate with a warm service. But as I sat in that pew, a group of children passed by on the way to their seat. It was a group of half-blind children leading those who were totally blind to a seat where they could worship God. And I felt the greatness and grandeur of God when those children walked by. We look for God in the great and mighty, and he comes in the love of poor blind children. Truly the prophet was right when he wrote, "Your ways are not my ways, neither are your thoughts my thoughts." What is it about God which captivates us? It is he who was able to call legions of armies to his aid, chose instead to enter Jerusalem as a penniless prophet riding on the back of a donkey. He did not come on a great white stallion with sword in hand and fists doubled, ready to strike the first one who stepped in his path. But he came as a preacher of peace, with no uniform, but the seamless robe of a peasant, and no power over men, except the power given him in each individual heart. This is one of the great surprises of God, his unobtrusiveness. Look for him, if you wish, in the big and the high and the mighty and the great. But if you want to find him, then you must search for him in the least and the last and the lost.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. Psalm 14:2.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And indeed, welcome back. Fred Jackson here, along with Chris Woodward and Ray Pritchard. And joining us now is Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays right here at American Family Radio at 7 a.m. Central. Jenna, welcome to what we're calling the news coup this week.
Well, I think that that Tim and Ed should have to reapply to come back on the show,
Okay.
and see if they qualify. If you guys want to hire them back.
Yeah, that's right. We're having so much fun here, Jenna.
Right.
Yeah, there's a little bit of news going on.
Just a little.
Just a little. But Jenna, you've been drawing people's attention also to other matters going on in Washington. And there was a vote this morning in a resolution that was put forward by Congresswoman Paulina Luna of Florida, and it had to do with the Attorney General Garland's reluctance to hand over audio of the interview the special counsel did with Joe Biden with regards to documents that were found on his property. And that resolution, that there was a vote this morning. Why don't you tell us about it, the results?
Yeah, so Representative Anna Paulina Luna put forward a resolution to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in what's called inherent contempt of Congress, because we all know by now that contempt of Congress can be followed up on with criminal charges by the DOJ. But when they're talking about their chief officer, the Attorney General, a historical precedent, even with Eric Holder, who is the Obama AG, and Trump's AG Bill Barr, both of them were also held in contempt of Congress, and the DOJ failed to act on it. I think that if we're serious as a country that no one is above the law and no one is below the law either, by the way, we all get constitutional protections, even though New York doesn't really think that that applies to Donald Trump. But if no one is above the law, then there needs to be some type of a special counsel or special prosecutor situation when it is a member of the DOJ, and especially the AG, him or herself, that is violating a congressional subpoena. And so there is already some measure, and that's called inherent contempt, that is the House of Representatives' power to pass a resolution and actually hold that officer in what's called inherent contempt, even so far as asking the sergeant at arms to go and arrest that individual and hold them in the House jail until they comply with the subpoena. That was originally what Paulina Luna wanted to do, but then this was a very toned down contempt push, and the proposal was only for a $10,000 per day fine, which you know that Merrick Garland's not going to be paying that out of pocket, right? It's just going to go to the taxpayers. So this was kind of more of an optics-driven thing anyway, unfortunately. But the measure then failed 204 to 210. So the lesson here, folks, is that Republicans really have no political will when it comes to something as simple as merely enforcing the law.
Well, Jenna, let's go back to the reason why they wanted the audio transcript of that interview. Garland was willing to give the written transcript, I understand, but he was refusing on the audio side. Why do you suppose that was?
Well, he just is refusing to give it over, and likely because that is far more damaging to hear the audio than the transcript. I mean, consider the debate that we saw just 2 weeks ago. The transcript would be bad enough of Joe Biden's incoherent mumbling, but the audio and what we all saw was certainly worse. So that's my guess, and of course, Congress is entitled to hear that, and it would probably show that the Democrats have been lying to us about Joe Biden's lack of mental capacity for far longer than the White House and suddenly all of the members of the leftist media are now suggesting.
Right?
Jenna, the president has this big press conference coming up later today, and even some of the Democrats are saying this is his last chance. This is it, that before the train leaves the station, he's got to perform well tonight. What do you expect? Do you expect he'll get tough questions from the mainstream media, or do you think it'll be more softballs from CNN and the others?
Well, apparently he needs to take another nap or two because they've pushed it back now to 6:30 Eastern instead of 5:30. So there's already that. But how many more chances are we going to give him to show what is plainly evident for all of us to see, which is that Joe Biden is not competent? And I have been saying on my radio program in the morning that this isn't just about the November election. This is about the next 7 months of a current sitting president that clearly is not running the country. I mean, he doesn't even want anything to happen after 8 p.m. until 10 a.m. So who exactly is running the country between at least, at minimum, those hours? But I do expect that because the mainstream media has apparently gotten the memo from somewhere in high up in the Democrat Party, whether that's former President Obama or whoever it is that's kind of calling the shots, that they have now all turned on Joe Biden, and they're actually calling out the truth, which is remarkable for the leftist media. So I do expect that he'll get some hard questions, and especially if Peter Doocy from Fox News is there and whoever else. And I don't think that the White House is going to be successful if they try to only call on certain members of the media that they've given pre-scripted questions to. That's happened in the past, but it's going to be very interesting to see if he lasts longer than 4 or 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it's Chris here. Earlier this week, Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre, hey, what happens, God forbid, somebody launches a nuke at us in the middle of the night? Who's going to wake up the president? Is it going to be the First Lady? Do you call the First Lady? And Karine Jean-Pierre went on to say there is a team. I thought about that because this president has often said things like, I'll get in trouble if I take questions, or they're going to get mad at me if I do. Is that the team? Like, is there a group of people controlling this man, like many of us talk and speculate on this program and social media?
Yeah, like we all learned in English class, the royal we. I mean, that's what this really seems like, right? Is the they, and we don't actually know who the they are. And as Americans, all of us deserve to know who is on that team. What exactly are they doing? Are they controlling the president, or is he actually executing the powers of his office? But likely, I mean, I had the same thought that whoever has been telling Joe Biden what to do on his team, certainly now we need to know who they are, what they've been doing, and also for how long, because this isn't just the last couple of weeks. And, with respect to Hollywood actor George Clooney, who's now written this op-ed saying, I saw at this fundraiser several weeks ago, the same Joe Biden that you all saw on the debate stage. Well, why didn't he come out that night and say it? And if you watched Jake Tapper's CNN response, the reporter for CNN was telling Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday that the White House was actually suggesting, in response to that op-ed, that Joe Biden had more stamina than George Clooney, because he stayed 3 hours later when Clooney just came in, did a couple of photo ops, and left. And Jake Tapper literally started laughing. I mean, it was hilarious to actually watch the leftist media on CNN, no less, and one of their key anchors just utterly break down by laughing and saying, I mean, because everybody just knows this is totally absurd.
You mentioned that we were talking earlier about that Clooney editorial in the New York Times. Apparently, Clooney said he talked to Barack Obama before to let him know that this editorial was coming, and Barack Obama did not object to that rather stinging editorial. Is Barack Obama a puppet master?
That's a great question, and I think we can all speculate that the answer to that is yes, but I would really like to know. And where is the accountability going to be, and from whom, when we have had this lie perpetuated to the American people for, I think, at least 4 years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the 2020 election. I mean, I was working for Donald Trump's campaign at the time, and there were still questions about Joe Biden's mental capacity then when he was campaigning from his basement. And the call at that point from the campaign was, well, don't go after Joe Biden's age. That could, offend, some of the older voters and so forth. I mean, looking back on that, maybe the campaign should have gone harder after that and asked and push some very sincere questions, but there needs to be accountability here. And again, this isn't just about the November election. This is about the last 4 years.
Yes. A lot of attention being paid, obviously, on what's going on with President Joe Biden and what is going to happen to the top of that ticket. And, Republicans and former President Trump kind of sitting back, enjoying the controversy on the Democrat side. But, Jenna, there's some things going on with regards to the Republican platform heading into their convention next week in Milwaukee, and that is starting to get some attention also because there's some divide there.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate for Republicans and for that party to have this controversy right now when the entire focus should just be on the Democrats and their disarray and chaos. But the Republican Party platform, unfortunately, is, as Senator Marco Rubio said, and Senator J.D. Vance said, the party platform is reflecting the nominee. And we have known since 2016, when evangelicals basically brokered a deal to support then candidate Donald Trump, that he's not really a big social issues guy. And yet the Republican Party stayed firm in terms of what it had championed for the last, 40 and 50 years. And unfortunately, this is a really big deal. It's not just about, well, there's still pro-life in there. Well, there's still, respect for the family in there. No, the platform excised the definition of marriage out of the platform entirely. And then it also watered down any stance for pro-life in terms of congressional action and fetal tissue research and specifically talking about God, our Creator, endowing us with the right to life. I mean, it was just so watered down. And our good friend Tony Perkins, who was also on this station from the Family Research Council, he just sent out an email, and this was actually just moments before I joined you, that was talking about this. And his question, I think, is perfectly articulated. He asks, will we stand for biblical truth or surrender to the spirit of the age? And that's the bottom line. I mean, we can talk about how much this election is important, how much, the Republicans are at least better for conservatives than the Democrats, at least, yes, religious liberty better, a little bit. But as a Christian, I don't want to support a candidate that is just a little bit to the right of the crazy Democrat leftist progressives. I want to support a candidate that's standing firmly for biblical values and for self-evident truth. And if the Republican Party is going completely off the rails, I mean, we've seen this from former Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel for years, posting about Pride Month, and they have so many people like Rick Grinnell that are part of the party. I mean, Donald Trump he had a Pride coalition back all the way to 2016. I mean, when I was asked about it, when I was working for him, what I would say is I am an evangelical Christian. I'm part of the evangelical coalition. This is where I stand and stand up for that and say, Donald Trump is a lot better. And of course, I was advocating then for his reelection. But the bottom line here is that we can't just sweep this under the rug and say, well, who cares? This is better. We can't stand up for pro-life. Otherwise, we're going to lose elections. If we don't stand up for the truth, what exactly do we think we're winning?
Hardly an election goes by without hearing or seeing or saying statistics that, there's a lot of evangelicals that don't vote. Based on the party moving to the left on issues of marriage, life issues, all these other things, are they risking losing people inside the big tent we always hear them talk about, on the off chance that they might get some people outside the tent to come hang out and vote for them?
Absolutely. And there have already been a number of pastors and, prominent evangelical and Catholic voices that are saying, we can't support this, and we are not going to vote for the Republican Party ticket, not just the top of the ticket, but all the way down. We'll start voting third party. I mean, I've gotten emails from listeners here at AFR asking about, what about starting just a Christian political party? And I think that this is the overall point, is that our institution of government is captured by these private organizations, the DNC and the RNC, that really control ballot access, and they actually need each other for their own political power. And so they feel free to do whatever they prefer. And they basically tell us, well, if you don't like it, what are you going to do about it? And what evangelicals and Christians and conservatives absolutely need to do is stand up and actually do something about it, and not just take this lying down and saying, well, just because you're better than the socialist, communist, Marxist over there, we're going to be okay with you watering down the very thing that you promised in 2016 to continue to stand firm for. And so I do think that if we have this window, if it's a political scale and we want to, visualize that as a spectrum, and there's kind of this toggle bar that goes, back and forth, that these are the people that are going to vote for the party. The further you expand to the left, the further that those voters who are actually in your tent on the right, that end is also going to move to the left, and you're going to lose that far right evangelical group. And Trump knew in 2016 that he had to have the evangelical support. That's why he had the pastors who were supporting him, the Pastors Coalition. That's why he had the evangelical and Catholic coalitions, and that's also why he selected Mike Pence, who was a very prominent evangelical. And I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions now about Mike Pence.
Supported Cruz too.
But absolutely, and that was a big reason that a lot of people were comfortable voting for Trump in 2016 when he was kind of unknown. And yes, he nominated Supreme Court justices that led to the overturning of Roe versus Wade, but that was just the beginning of the wins for pro-lifers. It has never been the pro-life stance. Let's get Roe versus Wade overturned, and then no matter what any blue states want to do, hey, as long as the states decide, then we're totally fine as pro-lifers with California and Colorado and New York having state-funded abortion on demand all the way up until maybe even moments after birth. That's not the pro-life position, and this is also not the constitutionally correct position. Dobbs returned the question of abortion regulation to the people and their elected representatives, which also includes Congress. Congress has the absolute power to legislate to protect life, so they could theoretically pass a heartbeat bill, 15, 16-week abortion ban for the whole country, whether there's some exceptions, all of that can be debated. And then other states could take it even further than that. So I, as a pro-life values and person and someone who is principled, I still stand for congressional action, and I wish that the Republican Party did as well, and I would love to see them return to the 2016 and previous platform.
Ray, I see a question on your face.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Jen, about what you said. Mr. Trump knew in 2016 he needed the evangelicals. I think it's fair to say, without the strong block of evangelicals voting for him, I don't think he would have won in 2016. I don't know what's really changed then. I mean, doesn't he need evangelicals as much as or even more in 2024 as in 2016? Or do you think the figuring at the top levels is, well, they've got no place else to go. They'll have to vote for us, and so we can water down the platform and get away with it. And my question, Jenna, is, doesn't Mr. Trump need us just as much today as back in 2016?
Oh, of course he needs us just as much as he needed us back in 2016. And the difference is that while we were willing to be independent and stand firm and say, well, Mr. Trump, we will only support you if, there is a segment of evangelicals who are not willing to make that same contingency. And that's what Trump and his campaign are counting on, is that evangelicals, quote unquote, have to support him. And so he's saying, hey, I've got them locked up, so now I can go ahead and take the party in the direction that I actually want to, because I don't need to worry about them. They're going to vote for me anyway. And a lot of them, I think, that's probably not a wrong calculation, that a lot of people still will. And I still get questions all the time saying, well, if you're not advocating for Trump, aren't you ceding to whoever the Democrats put up, if that's, Biden or somebody else? But the point here is that we still need to stand for truth, or as Tony Perkins said, will we stand for biblical truth or surrender to the spirit of the age? I don't think that evangelicals should make Trump comfortable and the Republican Party comfortable in undermining our values.
For those who say you can separate your politics from your biblical beliefs, I think what we've been discussing here the last few moments, you cannot as a Christian. This is all part of spiritual warfare. And ultimately, we don't answer to a political party. We answer to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Are we going to stand? Are we going to be lights? Are we going to be salt at this time? And I think if never before, we need to take that stand. And Jenna, we appreciate the stand that you take very much. And I look forward to your coverage next week of the convention and what is going to transpire there. And let's be clear, this platform will be voted on at the convention, correct, Jenna?
Well, the draft has already been voted on, and Tony Perkins actually gave a really good statement on the FRC Action website, so you can go and listen to this. It's already been voted on, but whether or not they can amend it and so forth, I think will be contemplated at the convention. But and this is why the delegates and evangelicals have to make our voices heard. Call your state GOP representatives, and everybody should know who those three people are, and tell them what you think about this platform, because you're absolutely right that we need to stand firm for biblical truth, because our political philosophy and our engagement as good citizens in this country must outflow from our biblical worldview. It can't be separate because the Bible also says you can't serve two masters. You cannot be a faithful Republican to a platform that is inconsistent with our faithfulness to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and that biblical truth. When in conflict, then you have to choose one or the other. And if you say, well, I'm going to be a faithful Republican over here and I'm going to be a faithful Christian over there, that's cognitive dissonance. You can't serve two masters because necessarily your political action should outflow from your faith.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care. And we're going to deputize you for the news crew. Yeah, you made it. So congratulations to Jenna on that front. All right, listen, what a time we're living in, guys. You know, the Democrat side with Joe Biden, is he going to be on the top of the ticket? Is there going to be a full revolt in the Democratic Party against their president? And what is going to happen there? And then, as we've just been discussing, over on the Republican side, is there an effort basically, as we have discussed, hey, the evangelicals will vote for us regardless of what happens. So let's try to increase the tent a little bit more and appease the pro-abortion side. And let's, on this, I think one of the things that really bothers me, and Jenna's pointed out too, it's not just the abortion language. It is the marriage language.
Yes.
The abortion language, rightly so, is getting a lot of attention, Ray, but the marriage language in this platform also.
Yeah, it says we believe in the sanctity of marriage, but they do not define it as one man and one woman.
Yeah, I would strongly advise people to stay and care and pay attention to this issue, make your voice heard, because I've been here 14 years next month. The party has moved to the left on the marriage and the life issue during my time here. On the life issue, just in the last couple of years, because the Dobbs decision came out, people on the left got mad. That helped them in some of their races, prevented that big red wave that we heard and thought we'd see in the midterm elections. And now you've got people like Senator J.D. Vance, who is a potential running mate selection for Donald Trump, out there saying he supports mifepristone, which is the chemical abortion pill that was at the center of a Supreme Court ruling a couple of weeks ago, if it's been that long. And so a lot of people on the right are moving to the left on these social issues, which were deeply held, sincerely observed beliefs by everybody on the right in 2010 when I arrived here at AFR. And now some of those people who were still in office have moved to the left on those issues.
Well, Ray, it also just points to the fact that we're called upon by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to pray for our political leaders.
100%. And we are called to be salt and light.
Yes.
And just a reminder, sometimes salt stings. If salt loses its savor, it's good for nothing but to be trampled on. If we have decided we're going to shelve our Christian convictions in favor of making a compromise to get somebody elected to office, we have gone too far. Jenna was very eloquent on that point, I think. It's well past time for evangelical Christians to stand up and say, no, we will not compromise on the life issue or on the marriage issue, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Chris, American Family News will be covering all of these big stories, what's going to be happening this evening with this news conference with President Joe Biden, but also the convention issues. And the convention issues are so important. So, folks, stay tuned. American Family News will be covering all of these events. Our programs here on American Family Radio will be covering all of this so that you need to stay informed, folks. A lot of attention right now on what's happening in the Democratic Party, but don't lose sight of what's happening next week with the Republican National Convention there in Milwaukee. As we've been talking, we need to stay in prayer on these matters, and we need to vote the convictions that the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ gives us. And that is what's important, because ultimately, Ray and Chris, we answer to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
That's exactly right.
All right. All right, folks, we got to take a break for AFR News. And we'll be back with Steve Jordahl. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, don't go away, folks. Much more ahead on this Thursday edition of Today's Issues. We'll be right back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Peter Rosenberger, author of the book A Minute for Caregivers, When Every Day Feels Like Monday.
I've been a caregiver for nearly 40 years, and I know how important it is to encourage a family caregiver. I also understand that caregivers don't have a lot of time, and each chapter of my book can be read in a minute. It's encouragement, support, and each chapter will point you to safety. Oh, by the way, they're all written in fluent caregiver.
A Minute for Caregivers is available at resources.afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Pressure has been mounting on the president to step down following his debate performance last month. Despite the calls, President Biden says he's firmly committed to staying in the race. Texas Senator Ted Cruz speculating about who could replace Biden as the Democratic presidential nominee.
If and when they dump him, I think their replacement nominee will be one of two people. It will either be Michelle Obama or it will be Kamala Harris.
Meanwhile, there's a high-stakes news conference for President Biden today.
As President Biden spends his day here at the NATO summit meeting with alliance members and Ukrainian President Zelensky, some of his top aides are expected to meet with Senate Democrats. Vermont Democrat Peter Welch became the first Senate Democrat to publicly call on the president to step aside, concerned, he wrote in the Washington Post, about the president's ability to beat former President Trump. Other lawmakers have suggested they want to see how President Biden handles this news conference set for this evening for signs of his path forward. At the NATO summit in Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Speculation growing about who former President Trump will select as his vice presidential nominee ahead of the upcoming Republican National Convention next week. Mark Meredith has more.
Former President Trump expected to name his running mate within a matter of days. Of course, the convention less than a week away, which means a name could leak at any time. Trump has publicly discussed several possible names for VP, but the top contenders are still seen as a few folks: Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. But during a Fox radio interview on Wednesday, Trump appeared to suggest that Burgum's strong support for some pro-life policies may go beyond where Trump stands.
I think Doug is great, but it is he's taken a very strong stance, or the state has.
Trump has also brushed aside reports that Senator Vance's beard could be a problem. Trump even laughed off those reports, saying Vance looks like Abraham Lincoln in his book.
The conservative leader thinks that pro-life voters need to stick with President Trump.
When the Republican National Convention convenes next week in Milwaukee to nominate Donald Trump to be its candidate for president, delegates will be asked to ratify a far different platform than in years past. Not everyone is happy with the changes in the pro-life plank, which those who crafted it believe will attract more people to vote Republican. Sandy Rijos is Director of Governmental Affairs at the American Family Association. During an appearance on American Family Radio, she weighed in on the RNC platform related to abortion.
It's very, very vague and does not have the philosophical, deep language. It's more plain language where you could drive a truck through some of it. Pro-life leaders, for the most part, who are D.C.-centric, caved a long time ago. They talk a good game, but it's kind of business for them to say they're pro-life. And when it comes to really fighting, they usually line up with the Republican establishment.
But Rio says Trump's platform is far better than the alternative.
Progressive Democrats believe in abortion for all 9 months. That Joe Biden is for abortion all 9 months. President Trump, we have to remember, compared to the other side where they want abortion for all 9 months, he still should be our candidate. He may not be where we are. He doesn't have the same convictions and passions on these issues. He has instincts that I think are really good on these issues, but he doesn't have the same passion, and so that's just the reality.
Rio says this is not the time for Christian voters to stay home. I'm Chad Groening.
Harvard University on Tuesday reversed suspensions for 5 students who participated in the anti-Israel encampment on the school's campus after the Harvard College Faculty Council took issue with the punishment for the students. Harvard graduate Shabbos Kestenbaum says these Jew-hating pro-Hamas supporters will not stop.
Oh, 100% they're going to do it again because Harvard just told them you can follow Jews on the way to class, you can violate school policy, you can set up tents, smoke weed, and have open-air laundry on campus, and that's all okay. And, you know, in that statement, they do talk about the right of Palestinian resistance, which is not a surprise because they were the ones who were blaming Jews for the largest massacre of Jews on the night of October 7th. But they were also talking about long live the student intifada. The intifada was the worst period of violence and terrorism against the Jewish people in the 21st century when school buses were blown up, hospitals, nursing homes. And my classmates and some of my professors look at that and say, good, we need to globalize it. We need that to come to the United States. This is not just an attack on Jews, it's an attack on Americans.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Every day, AFA offers biblical insight on issues that others aren't willing to touch in the hopes that you'll become a world changer. That's why we're offering an in-depth worldview training course called Activate. 13 different professors teaching 18 sessions, all available online, including a printed workbook to help you apply what you've learned and 1-year access to AFA streaming content to give you even more resources. Find out more about Activate and sign up today at activate.afa.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR.
And we are back to this Thursday edition of Today's Issues. Fred Jackson here along with Dr. Ray Pritchard in Kansas City, Kansas. And joining us right now is Steve Jordahl, part of the news coup.
The news coup. I just want everybody to know, once again, I am sitting in the boss's chair. So I'm feeling very authoritative right now.
Well, that's what happens during a coup, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
I will not be giving you any false information, at least not on purpose.
Ray, are you traveling this summer?
I'm going to be gone, Fred. As a matter of fact, next 3 weeks, biggest trip of the year.
Okay.
Leaving Saturday for North Carolina, speaking Sunday morning at the Shepherd's Church in Cary, North Carolina, and then zooming from the church to the airport and up to Albany, New York for a week at Word of Life, up in high up in the Adirondack Mountains, and then from there taking 3 flights. My wife and I are out to Missoula, Montana, to spend a few days with our Montana crew, and then flying from Missoula to Dallas to Philadelphia to spend a week speaking at America's Keswick in Whiting, New Jersey. So it's a busy 3 weeks. Yeah,
man, oh man, you've got a schedule.
Well, and you know, when I was younger, this kind of thing didn't bother me too much. It takes longer, Fred, to get yourself ready.
Yeah,
to make sure you haven't forgotten anything. So we're going North Carolina, New York, Montana, and then back to New Jersey by way of Dallas, Texas.
All right. So what are you going to be teaching on? These different venues, different topics, or is it young people or a mix of crowd?
Well, I'll be speaking at the church in Cary on the lawyer who wanted a loophole from the story of the Good Samaritan. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The lawyer who wanted, he came with a question, but he was not sincere, and he was surprised by the answer Jesus gave. So that's this coming Sunday morning. And then on next week at Word of Life, I'll be speaking on the love revolution from 1 Corinthians 13.
Okay.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
I think there's a song.
There is a song. There is a song. That kind of dates us, Fred. We know that song. The young ones go, I never heard that song. And then do you know the song, Steve? You surely
absolutely.
do. Absolutely, yeah. And then I'll be doing that same series.
Dionne Warwick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Dionne Warwick is the one who really made it famous. I'm doing that same series twice, once in New York and then again in New Jersey.
Well, we'll be praying for you, brother. That's exciting.
And are you heading to South Korea anytime soon?
In the break, in the break between the last segment and this one, I rushed upstairs, said hi to my wife, and I told her we've been invited to come back to South Korea. We got to set a date. So probably after this program is over, we're going to probably next March heading back to South Korea.
Well, there you go.
You are a busy guy.
I know.
Yeah.
Fred, I think someone needs to cover Ray's international stuff. I'll be talking to you about maybe getting the credit card out again and sending me on a trip.
Come on, you know.
Right.
Well, you know what they say. It's harder to hit a moving target Always keep your feet moving. Don't stay in one place too long.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, Ray is not in the witness protection program, folks. That's not why he's moving around.
So far I'm not. That's right.
All right, Mr. Steve, what you got for us?
All right, AFA action is in the news. This is quite the coup, I think. So the New York Times, or actually a guy named Jay Willis, published an op-ed in the New York Times. And he's the editor-in-chief of a little outfit called Balls and Strikes, designed for progressive commentary on the legal system.
Progressive read leftist.
Leftist, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's writing, the New York Times published it, that Donald Trump has fallen out of favor with the Federalist Society, or at least the Federalist Society has fallen out of favor with Donald Trump.
Okay. Now, the Federalist Society has been used as a advisory board for possible picks for federal court nominees, judges.
And that's the point. And it's true because they not only they were used, they were the ones that recommended the three picks that Donald Trump made in his first term
for the Supreme Court.
Yes, according to this New York Times article, this is what they're saying: that Donald Trump's nominees in the second term, if he has one, are quite likely to be different than they were during the first term. He will take his judicial cues not from the conservative legal establishment as he previously did, but instead from the conservative legal movement's extreme fringes.
And guess who?
Well, guess who? It seems to be that one proposal comes from AFA Action, an organization whose mission is to align policy and biblical and constitutional principles.
How dare they?
I know, right?
Really.
So I happened to talk with Philip Jareggi, who is part of AFA Action, and they have indeed been vetting candidates. They have 5 candidates that they think might make good Supreme Court justices. And I talked to Philip yesterday, I talked to him this morning, a story that's going to be running tomorrow, about the president leaning on AFA Action to see if for some recommendations. And this is what he had to say, Cut 12.
Why we've come on the radar, I don't know. I suppose the New York Times recognizes that we're doing serious work and they want to try to separate us from having any influence in this process. But whether President Trump is reelected and wants to talk with us or not is really not the point. The point is, who are the justices that need to be on the court, and does their philosophy match with the Constitution? So we've identified ones that we think would do that. And the common characteristic is these are justices who respect what the Constitution says, but also who have a faithful worldview that comports with the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, there you have it. And Ray, we know how important judicial nominees are because we saw the impact of President Trump in his first term in able to get those justices on the Supreme Court, and they had a lot to do with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So the courts are important, and congratulations to AFA Action for putting some pretty substantially very conservative Christian voices out there.
Hey, I think this is tremendous. Look, the Federal Society, they're good people. And a lot of the names that they gave to President Trump in his first term turned out to be excellent judges. So I don't think that's really the question here. I think, how can we find exactly what he said? How can we find judges who are committed to the Constitution and to the principles of the Declaration of Independence, who actually want to do what the documents say America was set up to do, and with a truly faithful worldview? That's going to cut down your field somewhat, but you're going to end up with some very good choices. So I don't know how all this happened, but hey, congrats to AFA Action. Well done, guys.
One of the things I asked Philip Jareggi, because we tend to see sometimes some of the justices that are appointed by conservative presidents, Republicans, tend to drift a little bit left. We've seen that in the past, and right now there's some questions about Amy Coney Barrett, whether or not she's been on some interesting sides of some interesting decisions. So I said, well, how do you know that these people, these 5 judges that you're recommending, aren't going to follow the same trade. And he says, well, not only do they have the right bona fides, in other words, they've written correctly and everything, but they have years, decades of putting these constitutional principles into practice. The names are Stuart Kyle Duncan, Lawrence Van Dyke, Christian Wagoner, Morris Tan, and Mark Martin. I'm assuming Mark Martin is not the former NASCAR driver, but I could be wrong. Christian Wagoner is the president of Alliance Defending Freedom.
Yes.
And she came to the fore. She argued the Jack Phillips case in front of the Supreme Court. So I think that's what brought her name to the front. But they're all good men and women.
And for that matter, isn't it possible that there could be some overlap between the judges that AFA Action recommends and those that the Federalist Society should recommend? It's not as if we're talking about two completely different groups, because both are generally conservative. AFA Action stronger on certain principles. This is one of the areas that I was thinking about what Jenna said in the last, and toward the end of that last segment about Trump's. And maybe it's his handlers, I don't know, changing things inside the Republican the platform and so on, which is troubling to all of us. Yet we look back at Mr. Trump personally. I was skeptical in 2016 about his promises about the judges, and yet he really delivered.
Yes.
Not just the Supreme Court, but the appeals court and federal courts all the way. He really did a good job. So I think it's very possible that if Mr. Trump wins his second term, he'll continue to give us more and more conservative justices. And I'll be glad if there's a hotline between the White House and AFA Action so he can pick up the phone and get our recommendations anytime he wants.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. All right, Steve.
So who's running the country? We always wonder that because there's a lot of speculation that Joe Biden isn't up to the task, we've heard. And so we keep thinking, is it Ron Klain, who's his chief of staff? Who is it? I think, and I might have some evidence to back this up, that it is one Dr. Jill Biden. And this is the evidence that I'm putting forward. If you are the president, if you're running the country, you get the pomp and circumstance that comes with the office, right? So hail to the chief every time Joe Biden walks out. It's been the anthem for presidents since I don't know when. Well, it turns out, according to the Washington Examiner, Dr. Jill has commissioned the Marine Corps band to do a fanfare for her.
Are you serious?
It's what it's called. It's called the first fanfare for the First Lady. Now, her office, I will say right up front, her office is dismissing the fact that the notion that she asked for this. The Examiner thinks she did, or at least its sources say that she did. But the number was played twice and then retired. I have a feeling it was retired for two reasons. One, because the bad press that Jill Biden actually asking for her own anthem created, and two, because it's just not a very good piece of music. Listen to this, cut 14. So, I don't know, Ray, do you think we should have to play that every time we bring you on the air?
Oh, you know, if that was the winner, what came in second? What came in third?
I don't know that it was a contest. I think someone just decided to put pen and paper to staff. And
oh, man.
That's not good. That's not good at all.
No.
That one's not going to fly. But to the more who's running the country, I think Jill Biden right now is, and this has been said before, Jill Biden is pushing her husband to stay in the office.
Yeah.
I think she enjoys being first lady, and it's not only just, pomp and circumstance. It is the power that comes with that office. She has a lot of influence. She has been out on the campaign trail, and I think if Joe Biden stays at the top of the ticket, you're going to see a lot more of Jill Biden rallies out there because she wants that position, and that is why, and she's been criticized. Why aren't you encouraging your husband, given his mental state, to step away from this, enjoy retirement, enjoy the time that you can with your husband? But it appears that Jill Biden, I remember how she responded the night of the debate, right afterwards. Joe, you did a wonderful job. Well, I'm trying to be kind here. I think she has integrity problems.
Well, she's a supportive wife, Fred.
I mean, what was she going to say? Honey, you stunk up
Boy,
the
did
joint.
you really?
Well, I think I would have taken him aside and said, honey, maybe it's time. Maybe
No, she has obviously been a cheerleader for him, and it's said that she likes the trappings of the office just as much as he does. So I don't know. We'll see. Interesting things going on yesterday in the Congress. They had a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. House Judiciary Committee on collusion in the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Basically, it was talking about organizations that take ad money and shut ad money out of conservative groups. Ben Shapiro there because he's the principal owner of Daily Wire.
Right.
But he had a really interesting interchange with California Democrat Eric Swalwell. Remember Eric Swalwell? He's the one that had an affair with the Chinese spy and everything, somehow still in Congress.
Yeah.
But Eric Swalwell thought he had.
Now, was this during a congressional hearing?
It was a congressional hearing. This was he was Ben Shapiro sitting at the table, behind a mic, and on the dais was Eric Swalwell, and Swalwell thought he had Ben Shapiro in a little bit of a pickle, and it did not go well for him. First of all, he wants to talk about Project 2015, which the president has
2025.
2015.
Yeah.
Where am I? Project 2025, which the president, former president, has said he doesn't know a whole lot about. But listen to this exchange between these two. Cut 13.
You support Project 2025?
I think, like President Trump, I haven't looked all that deeply at Project 2025, but it seems that Democrats on this committee, sort of like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, if they say Project 2025 enough, their presidential candidate becomes alive again.
And so, well, let's just talk about pieces of it, and I guess you can tell me if you support it. You probably want less bureaucracy, right?
I do.
I want less bureaucracy. You want more efficiency?
I do.
I want more efficiency. You want taxpayer money spent wisely?
I do. Congrats on becoming a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents would be proud because we found some receipts. You did say, I think homosexual activity is a sin.
Yes, I'm a religious Jew.
Sure,
that's true.
There's a genetic component.
You found me out.
Orientation. But the view of all religious people I know has always been that sexual behavior is something that is up to you. And you said, I may have a desire to sleep with many women, but I do not.
I agree with me. Yes, that's true.
Ben Shapiro is not one to fade away from being challenged like that.
He loves the debate. I wish that he was on some ticket we could see him debating against the Democrats because, oh, my goodness, he's good at it.
Hey, Vivek Ramaswamy
yes,
and Ben Shapiro. How about that ticket, Ray?
Oh, I like it. I like it.
That would be a lively one.
That would be. Look, put either one of those people up against, Kamala. Okay?
Oh.
There would be nothing left when they finish.
I'd pay money to see it,
Yes.
to get in to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, so, Hollywood has a way of combining names, like Ben Affleck and what, the celebrity couples, they will give them one name. So what would Ramaswamy and Shapiro be? Shapiro Swami?
I like it.
Shiraswamy?
Shiraswamy, yes.
So, all right. So Florida has put a new law. Florida's kind of leading the way in what they call themselves the free state of Florida. And they put a new law up on there which says that that schools can have chaplains, in-school chaplains, right? So there's maybe a rabbi, some pastor or something that can be there to help counsel children if they need that kind of a counsel. Well, guess who's stepping up to the plate and saying they want to be part of this? Lucian Greaves is the founder of the Satanic Temple. And the Satanic Temple says, you can't do this without us. So they are putting their hat in the ring saying if you're going to have any pastors or religious chaplains, you got to bring in a Church of Satan pastor or priest or whatever they call themselves to counsel these kids. Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Ray, that's a well-practiced tactic of atheist groups when a state moves in this direction to allow chaplains, to allow pastors in the community to come in and act as counselors. That's one of the first things the satanic group, the atheist groups do. They're there to challenge.
Well, what's going to happen here is, one hopes anyway, what will happen is the school board will get a little spine, that they'll be willing to say, look, we're going to have recognized leaders from recognized religious groups, and they are here not so much to proselytize, but they are here to help, to encourage, to listen, and if necessary, to pray with. Kids today are under a whole lot of pressure. I don't believe that the what do they have in the Satanic Temple anyway? What they have pastors, ministers?
I think they're priests. But this was my question for you, Ray, because they say that they are, they're not worshiping an actual devil. It's humanist. It's more atheist, free choice. That we celebrate the human ability to be their own God, I guess. So are you buying that? Has the Church of Satan become a little less dangerous than it was before?
The God of this world has come out and has disguised himself as an angel of light. No, who is behind the Church of Satan? Well, whose name is a part, whose name is on the door, right? Whose name is on the sign? No, Satan is behind this, whether they admit it. In fact, Steve, Satan is behind this, whether the local priests of their church understand this or not.
Keith Green had a song called "Since No One Believes in Me Anymore." Do you remember that song? Basically, it's I'm doing so well convincing the world to not follow God since nobody believes in me anymore. You know, so.
Well, I tell you what, Satan is already in our schools.
Yeah.
And that battle goes on, and we've talked about this so many times, done so many stories over the years about what's being taught in our schools, and it certainly, Ray, is rebellion against godly standards. But so glad to see what's happening in states like Louisiana, where they're going to post the Ten Commandments. Glad to see that in other states they're looking at a biblical curriculum that can be taught. And I believe, Ray, there is a movement going on in this country right now, responding as the left's agenda has become more evident in recent years. I'm talking about the transgender agenda, basically the rebellion against family, Christian, biblical values, that there is now a fighting back. And I want to congratulate lawmakers in states like Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and other places like that, that are saying, no, we're not going to turn our kids over to the secular humanists. We're going to fight back.
Look, you can always guarantee the devil's going to overplay his hand. And I mean that literally, spiritually. He's going to overplay his hand. He's going to win a victory or two, then he's going to go too far. And that's what's happened, I think, with the transgendered movement. It has gone too far. We've said as a society, look what you do as a 35-year-old person. That's one thing, but keep your hands off our kids.
Yeah.
Don't mutilate our kids in the name of some perverse, evil ideology. And you know what? There was a time when it was just evangelicals saying that. Now, just generally across the country, there's a building coalition that is saying enough is enough is enough.
Yeah. Homeschool movement is moving forward across the country.
It is.
We've seen a big increase in Christian schools.
School choice.
And really, taxpayers, folks, they have a right to fight back and say, wait a minute, my tax dollars are going into this public school system. I have a say in what's going to be taught to my kids. And glad to see that this is groups like Moms for Liberty and others that we talk about are out there fighting, and we need to be supporting them. All right, folks, out of time again, and
out of week.
Out of week, yeah. Tim and Ed will be back tomorrow for Trivia Friday. My thanks to Steve and to Ray. Ray, you're taking off. When is it for First North Carolina?
For Cary, North Carolina. Be there Sunday morning.
All right.
Shepherd's Church.
Be praying for Ray and the mission work that he's going to be doing over the next month or so. Our thanks to Chris Woodward and to our producer, Brent Creeley. And stay tuned, folks.
Jenna Ellis.
And Jenna Ellis, yes. Thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned to American Family Radio. Much more great programming ahead. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.